The world is changing faster than ever before. In the past 10 years, there has been an exponential technological evolution, the kind of technology that has revolutionized the world of work as we know it.
The Lawyers Hub was founded on the principle that law needs to interact more with technology, and that greatly affects tech policy as well as access to justice. So the Lawyers Hub exists as a confluence between law and technology, working on tech policy, on emerging technologies, as well as increasing and upskilling the knowledge of lawyers in the area of technology. We support tech startups as well to ensure that the tech ecosystem also engages in policy, but as well understand the issues around data protection, issues that also concern their structure, as well as intellectual property.
If you look at the evolution of technology, it's been relegated as an alternative in most systems. But the realization that 21st century has brought us into is that technology has to be an integral part of our day-to-day systems. And if you look at some critical technology areas like artificial intelligence, blockchain, nanotechnology, biotechnology, then it gives us a strong indication that if we do not start having discussions on the use of these technology areas, as far as law is concerned, then we may be in some kind of trouble. So lawyers are leading the debate on the use of these technologies, especially in Africa.
Over the years, the Lawyers Hub has supported the innovation ecosystem, convened events such as the Africa Law Tech Festival and the Global Legal Hackathon. The Lawyers Hub has also supported government innovations within the justice sector, as well as trained government institutions and more than 10,000 lawyers across Africa on emerging tech policy.
Our dream at the Lawyers Hub is to have open access to law. We envision a continent where there is access to justice through leveraging technology and with a crowd of enlightened lawyers. We see a continent that also protects its own through better tech policies, that emerging technologies, through its regulation, will offer better value and consumer protection for the people within Kenya and within the African continent. We envision that we will convene policy makers, regulators, as well as lawyers who are more enlightened on emerging technologies and with better digital skills. And we invite you to be a part of this great vision for Kenya and for Africa.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from today. My name is Linda Bonyo, and what a pleasure to do this again. I've been missing in action for a long time, and I'm so grateful for all the support that you've accorded to Lawyers Hub throughout this time. And I'm really happy to do this again and to be able to talk about the Artificial Intelligence Bill 2026. Thank you for joining us. I'd want to first thank you for the overwhelming registration for this particular webinar. It means that there's keen interest in getting our country to the next level. So thank you for joining in today. I'd like to invite you to go to the chat. Let us know who you are, where you're joining in from. Please connect even on LinkedIn. Follow Lawyers Hub on LinkedIn. You'll be able to get a bit more of a news that we're doing. And I'd like to highlight two things. We're currently recruiting AI policy fellows. And so you could join us and change the trajectory of your career into tech policy. So I'd invite you to go to our website and check out lawyershub.org. We also want to invite you for the festival that's happening on 9th and 10th of August in Nairobi, and we hope that you can join us. Be on the waiting list, go to lawyershub.org. It's widely attended, and so we hope that you could, be able to join us and support the work that we're doing. And talking about support, we'd really love for you to share our content on social media. It keeps us alive. We'll be very happy for you to follow us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and also on our different accounts. We really, really appreciate that, especially on Instagram. Give us some love. And so today, I'd want to, maybe appreciate faster people that are joining us. I see Rachel Firestone joining us from Berlin, Germany, Gaurav Kumar from India, Jackie Ngutia, Kenya, who's part of the Judicial Service Commission, Masi Rairimu, who is a legal tech founder, Francis Katitu from Catholic University, a law student, Efi Washira from Nairobi, as an IT consultant. We have Uzima, who's a law student as well. Rachel Magege from Tanzania, thanks for joining us. Forgive me if I don't see your name because it's moving so fast, but I see Fida Kenya is here. I am also seeing someone from Montenegro, Quincy. Okay. I'm also seeing Shika Lewis from South Africa, doing media and technology. And Opudo Michelle also joining us, as well as Kenya National Commission of Human Rights. Someone from Malawi has also joined in, Grace from Cape Town, Brian from Egerton. Thank you very much, everyone. You're all over the place, and we're grateful. Thank you from JQuat, every university that has joined us today. We really appreciate it. And I just mentioned those names to show the diversity of the people that come in here, from policymakers to lawyers to students. We appreciate you. And Dr. Nicholas Okumu, also thank you for joining us, orthopedic surgeon. Okay. Thank you so much. So I'll pause there so that I can, concentrate on the presentation. We're going to take, I would ask you to stay with us. We'll start from the presentation so that we go deep. This is why we do master classes at the festival. So we go deep. The intention is for you to understand, and then from the discussion, you engage from your point of view, how you see this, and also how you think it impacts the country and also other African countries. We like to go deep. Number two, we'd also like for you to engage by either writing an article in the papers, engaging with the parliamentary committee. So the intention is to give you the tools and the vocabulary that you can be able to use to be able to engage effectively. I have my own personal views about this bill, which I will try and not stay within the discussion, but I will be able to go in deep, and then you can make sense of what we see as important. And we want to move away from personality, like who brought in the bill. Those are not discussions we'll try to center on, but we will ideally center on how can we make this better and how do we push our countries forward, especially African countries. We're also very alive to what's happening in the world today. So I want you to also see it from the current geopolitical situation across the world and what we need to do in that sense. So thank you very much. And so this discussion will take maybe about 20 minutes. And then we see how we proceed with the discussions. At the point of discussion, I will open this up. You can lift up your hands after the discussions to be able to, engage. You have about 30 seconds to 1 minute to be able to let us know your view, and then we can proceed from there. So thank you for joining us. Let me wear my PowerPoint hat and see how this works. So we reviewed the AI bill, which was introduced to the Senate by Senator Karen Nyamu. If you understand, for those that are joining in from Kenya, we have a two-tier kind of system within Parliament, which has the Senate and which has the National Assembly. And so this bill was introduced in the Senate. The Senate ideally is supposed to focus on two things, which is one is the counties, but also they engage in the impeachment of the president. Which those are like the two major things that I would like to highlight. So let's look at one, the national strategy, the AI strategy. What does the bill introduce? So we are going to have an EU comparison because a lot of people have talked about the EU angle in this bill. Also looked at some global legislations on what's happening, the political economy, because we know that this is a political system, but also parallelly to the Startup Act in Kenya. So what does the bill do? What are the structure? We'll also look at compare it to the national AI strategy, which Kenya has launched, last year. Compare it to the EU AI Act, look at the political mischief, but also come up with verdict and recommendations, which we'd really like to hear your thoughts about this. So the next slide. So it has 37 clauses across 6 parts. There are various opinions on who's brought in the AI bill first. But of course, Kenya steals the spot. 27% of Kenyans are using ChatGPT daily. This is before maybe 2 weeks ago when everyone moved to to Claude. But then also there's 0 obligations in this bill on foreign AI providers, and we'll talk about it. So let's look at the different parts in terms of the definitions. That's where we'll sort of begin. The bill also establishes an AI commissioner's office, and it outlines the functions and the powers. Then it has an advisory committee, which is a multi-stakeholder body. And it also introduces some financial provisions on how the office is funded, and then how the AI governance actually works in terms of risk classifications, introduces ideas of sandboxes, and also offenses and penalties. I'd request that you don't lift your hands because it distracts my presentation. Thank you. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is really to look at what are the strengths and what are the critical gaps. So we hope that you'll take time to read the bill for yourself. It's only 26 pages, but we know that the impact is actually, higher. So one, which we know is everyone's delight politically, is deepfake. It criminalizes deepfakes, really introduces explicit consent, but also puts in a 5 million Kenya shillings fine or 2 years in prison. This is stronger than the EU provision, because also it ideally expands the definition of deepfake. Number 2, in terms of a human-centric AI mandate, it says that all AI must enhance but not replace human capability. So this is good. Then in terms of workforce impact assessment, it also introduces this, which is actually not available globally, having a mandatory pre-deployment employment assessment. So that's great, especially for those in labor law, those that are employed. There's a lot of, now billionaires really wanting to replace humans. If you look at what happened this past week with Jeff Bezos wanting to buy more companies, manufacturing companies, so that he replaces humans with robots. So that's something that great to talk about. Then constitutional independence, it being a state office, so that's the highest institutional protection available in Kenya. So that's great to have the office of the AI having that sort of independence, which we'll talk about that kind of independence. Then, of course, it's a Senate bill, and senators want to justify why this is a Senate bill. So they say that it's, it introduces this advisory committee, sandboxes, literacy across all the 47 counties in Kenya. So we go to the next slide that looks at the Kenyan bill versus the US. Last week, the US introduced something interesting, which was called the US AI policy National AI Policy Framework. Let's go to this in terms of civil liability. I acknowledge the presence of people who've been working in the labor industry for platform workers. We have an association for platform workers who've been working within the gig economy. And I must tell you that this bill has no civil liability. It only has the criminal liability. So you are not actually being, if somebody, your ex posts pictures of you, whatever, even using AI, you don't have any civil liability within this particular bill. So that's a question. So anyway, we compared this bill with the National AI Strategy that was launched, and there are various things that we can see that it gets well in terms of governance and architecture, equity and human rights. It really tries up to that point. But there are issues that are coming in terms of AI literacy, which as scores are still really low. Digital infrastructure, it does very little to handle this digital infrastructure. So it tells you about the 2 problems that we're seeing. In terms of technicality, do we have the skill set within Parliament to do this? But also number 2, it shows you that a bill introduced in Senate might have issues because it dances around the issues that it can't regulate. We also see that there's no reference at all to copyright and IP framework on how your data is protected, especially for creators. We've seen musicians go on the streets, refuse to use AI just because a lot of their work, for example, Anthropic has been sued for taking in books and using them for Claude, for example, without the author's permission. So those are some of the things that we see that have not been handled within the Kenyan ecosystem. So as we see this in terms of what works where, digital infrastructure, investment and innovation. We do not see any tax incentives, no startup fund, no IP framework, no FDI mechanism, only sandboxes. With sandboxes now are proving to be a problem across the world because government then gatekeeps who innovates and who does not innovate, who gets into the sandbox without rules and who does not get into that. So let's talk about the geographical impact. So first we examined all the counties. For those that are familiar with Olkaria, for example, where the data centers, there's been calls for data, there's been innovations around data centers that are using geothermal technology within Olkaria. So we look at different counties. How does this impact them? There are counties that really impacted in terms of literacy, but then also that will be impacted by data centers in this sense. We'll try and share this map on our platform so that you could be able to look at what are the high risk and what are the unfunded if your focus is really on counties. So yeah, the next slide, we talk about what exactly this means for Africa. There's been different, discussions around the African continent, but also after the AU and AI and EU. So let's look at the EU. I've read articles this week on why this really mirrors the European Union. But we must know that the European Union has 27 different countries. This is a Senate bill. Number two, the territorial scope. We see that Kenya does not have extraterritoriality. It's simply in Kenya. Foreign providers still unaffected. But in terms of extraterritoriality, EU covers that. Then we look at the risk tiers. We see that general purpose AI is really not ideally covered within this particular bill compared to the EU. Then also in terms of prohibited AI, this is left to the cabinet secretary to come up with regulations. I personally do not always appreciate that because you're leaving these problems for the future, but also it's a lazy way of making laws. You need to have comprehensive regulations that go with this particular bill. Then in terms of pre-market conformity, the bill does not provide that. In terms of maximum penalty, the EU's, I think, intervention has always been in terms of your global annual turnover for companies, so that we just don't have Kenya shillings 5 million and somebody says, I can afford that because big tech can afford that in a second. And then in terms of civil liability, we're also seeing that there's no civil cause of action within the bill. And then finally, in terms of general purpose AI and foundational AI, we have a complete absence within this particular bill. Next slide, please. So what are the places where this exceeds the EU, the Kenyan bill, in terms of deepfake criminal prohibition? You need explicit consent, which is required. In the EU, there's only labeling only. There's no criminal sanctions in that sense. So Kenya has this threshold that looks really good in terms of deepfake. Then, of course, it takes this human-centric AI mandate about jobs, which is a serious issue. In Europe, they're currently talking about universal basic income as a result of artificial intelligence really eliminating people out of jobs. Then finally, on workforce impact assessment, that is, left to member states within the EU. But then Kenya takes this first mover advantage, which is great, as identified by the International Labour Organization. So we've looked at Kenya and what's missing, the most dangerous gaps. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to try to save time because I have a lot of slides, I promise you. So in terms of definitions, so those that really like semantics and, what this definition looks at. Kenya has only 13 definitions. The EU has 61. There's a definitional gap ratio, which you see as 5:1. And there are 6 critical absent concepts that we see in this particular definition. Let's go. So what we see as aligned in terms of definitions is on deployer, who is a deployer who deploys AI technology, and data subject. What Kenya brings in that's broader than the EU, of course, we've talked about is deepfakes in terms of definition. Maybe we know why, because it's political. Politicians are going into elections, and so the definition of deepfakes is very important to them. But we also look at some definitions on technology. Kenya really has enumerated specific terms within the Act. But we need technology neutral definitions in this sense. And that is what we could learn from the European Union in this sense. Let's Go to the next slide. Also, we're seeing that in terms of enactment, there could be confusion in systems who are the users in that particular sense. Kenya is lacking definitions on biometric ID systems and serious incidences. Those need to be put within the AI Act, the AI bill that we are talking about. Next slide, please. We also noticed that in terms of comparing what's happening in the world, there was a great, development last year with GPI, the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. And it's now sort of being used as the gold standard on what AI definition could look like. And it's been acknowledged by different countries. So we think that Kenya should look at how to implement the Global Partnership on AI developments from last year. So we're going to compare what different countries are doing, what they have done. If you're looking at either have a comprehensive AI Act, or you have something like Brazil and Vietnam, where you have, which is like what we are, developing to Vietnam and Brazil, rather than really pick recommendations from the EU, where the system is totally different. It's not one country, it's 27 different split states. There's also the fear that coming up with regulation before having a national policy framework is a danger to Kenya, because we've come up with a national AI strategy. There are currently interventions by KICTANET, the Ministry of ICT, and the UK working on artificial intelligence policy for the country. We have jumped straight to legislation. I don't know what that looks like. So I want us to compare the different countries and what it looks like. That's the EU, South Korea, Brazil, China, the UK, Japan, and Kenya. So we look at the legal status. Is this binding? What are the risk classifications? And then also what's prohibited AI in primary law. And this is simply just drawing red lines on what ideally is unacceptable. For example, some countries have drawn red lines in terms of war, and saying this is a red line in terms of AI use in war, that there must be a human in the loop. And also pre-market conformity. Before you go to market, what kind of conformity do you have before you deploy an AI tool in that sense? And then transparency obligations, and also in terms of deepfake and synthetic media. So you can actually see what different countries are looking at in that sense. Also, the important things to look at in terms of human oversight. Where does Kenya get it? Do you need human oversight? What's the maximum penalty? How do you penalize? Do you have a dedicated AI regulator? And we're going to talk about this to compare the UK. The UK, for example, has a multi-agency system. There is no AI office, but the EU has an AI office. And also Kenya now is proposing an AI commissioner. So which system is great? Do we have existing offices actually regulate, AI, or you have other different people that do this? Those who are in climate change and energy this week, as we talk about fuel and whether we are going to still exist next week with petrol, environmental obligations also. Do we have this? None of the countries have had this before, but this is really important. Kenya offers this leaves it to the guidelines. And then extraterritorial reach, which we've talked about. So next slide. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you're just joining us, we are almost halfway through the presentation. So we're looking at the cross-jurisdiction score that we've just looked at, and Kenya, of course, looks right there in the middle. And I'm going to explain why it comes right before China. Let's go to the next slide. So as we see from Africa, we've not had a specific AI-specific legislation. South Africa is currently going through discussions on its AI policy framework, and calls are open to get your opinion heard. If you follow our AI policy work, or if you haven't, please go to aipolicy.africa. It always has the latest. Right after this webinar, we'll post the latest from Africa on AI policy, across the continent. So we hope that you can join us on that. So really, Kenya is trying to set the pace. Egypt had already done its AI strategy, and now they're actually doing a second version of that AI strategy. So the playbook has been strategy, national policy, and then legislations, and then maybe sector-specific regulations in that sense. So last week, the US launched the National AI Policy Framework. Same two frameworks, same month, actually almost the same sort of week. So we want to see what difference it is. People have called Kenya various things because of the work that the US has done within the country. So we want to see how what can be borrowed from either frameworks. Next slide. So the Kenyan bill has a governance-first approach. So it creates an AI commissioner, advisory committee. Also, it has a rights protective. Institution building, it looks at how do we build institutions, sandbox, register. It has a universal mandate that this must be humanitarian first, then a criminal enforcement and county devolution. The White House framework that was released last week has this innovation-first approach. So it removes barriers, just wants people to build and innovate. That means deregulation. So there's no federal body that's, sort of making, regulations and doing this. Minimal institutions, so they're removing institutions, unlike the EU. Then preemption forecast. But also, it makes very serious comments at the very end of this regulation, of this framework. It says that states, which is like counties, should not make regulations on AI development. But what it also does, and we know what California had already tried to do in terms of artificial intelligence regulation, but also what it does in this sense is to leave this sort of enforcement to sectors and sector regulators and to the courts. That is where their policy framework and will develop. We know big tech is in charge in the US. I will not try to sugarcoat. So this really favors big techs to keep going, keep building. But really little impact on how do we protect our jobs and our people. So the things that Kenya could be able to pick from this is child protection. The US White House framework is really great on age assurance, parental controls, and points to the Take It Down Act. Also in infrastructure development, which is missing from our bill, and also IP protection. We don't have this. The other model that really is absent is on the model governance, which we talked about, but the use of courts. So you can see what it could look like. We will try and share these presentations, but please, you have to say it was from Lawyers Hub. Stop lying to people that you're brilliant. I'm kidding. So we see three things in terms of institution building, deepfakes, and the GPI, so which is really, really important. Next, with China and seeing the difference that China is doing in terms of AI regulation. My time was up, so are we there? Yes. So let's go to China. So China took the approach that we didn't need a specific AI regulation. It just talks about Kenya has one comprehensive bill, put everything in it. That's what we have. But China introduced different ways in which they looked at. In March 2022, they came up with this algorithm recommendation measures on how to actually bar price discrimination. If you go to a supermarket now, like the people in the US that went to Walmart, and you see dynamic pricing on a good, whatever price you see is not the one that your friend sees. So this is very different. You can see this even with ride-hailing apps where our pricing is different. So China tried to do that and bar price discrimination to protect gig workers from these algorithms. Then in January 2023, they came up with this mandatory labeling that you must label AI work. This is missing from the Kenyan bill. Then also they came up with generative AI interim measures in terms of how training data, what to do with it, content moderation, but also algorithmic filing. Kenya comes up with this filing in terms of a public register for artificial intelligence within the bill. Then also AI content labeling that I've talked about, this was like the latest in September 2025. Then in terms of a comprehensive AI law, they also have not done this as of March 2026. So as we discussed, what is the best way to approach this? Do you have one bill? Do you have sector-specific ones? Do you create a new institution? What's the role of the data commissioner in that sense? Next slide. Okay, so we've talked about the differences in this. Training data, if you're an artist, musician, whatever it is, you've written a book, this should concern you. If you're a developer, this as well should concern you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so how do we have what Kenya can learn from this? Kenya is picking a lot of stuff from the EU, but China has a socialist system. Kenya is a democracy, as it looks like. So what do you do, and where's the political mischief in this kind of layered approach or one schedule approach? We have seen this with governments. What they do is they want to introduce an AI bill, but they don't introduce it. They give it to a private member. So even if you blame them, they say, oh, it's a private member's bill. If it's well received, it's their bill, If it's not well received, oh, it was a private member's bill, it's not government doing this. And this is not the first time it's happening. We saw it with the AI, the tech practitioners bill. Sorry, I forget the name. The ICT practitioners bill, where the government constantly kept, blaming the private sector for not aligning to what the government was doing in that sense. Let's go to the next slide. I'd like us to, sort of look at the political mischief, as I had talked about. So we're seeing this presidential controlled disguised as independence. The president will still appoint the AI commissioner. AI now, in my view, is really life-changing technology in the ways that it could be used and abused. So we still see the Public Service Commission still appoint this person, recommend them to Parliament. President still appoints the AI commissioner. We also see sandbox as executive gatekeeping. We've seen it, they gatekeep. There's a problem with sandboxing that needs to be fixed. And we look forward to your recommendations on how sandboxes needs to be done. If you're not aware, the ICT Ministry as well as the Capital Markets Authority have sandboxes running in Kenya. Then the big tech protection architecture, they're actually just not, they're not going to be, this bill focuses on the startup. It does not focus on, OpenAI or Claude or Anthropic, no. Then what we also need to see in terms of where the president is taking us to is the same way the data commissioner was, appointed. A vacancy arises, Public Service Commission shortlist, president chooses from a shortlist, Parliament approves, commissioner is appointed. So it's actually the person the president wants. And how are they removed? On the recommendation of the cabinet secretary, who is a direct presidential appointee. So there's no independence as we look at it. Number two, what's the second mischief? The big tech protection architecture. So a Kenyan startup has to register with the AI commissioner. There's risk assessment before deployment. There's a human rights impact assessment. There's a 5-year record keeping, and there's annual compliance report. They face 5 million Kenya shillings criminal liability. OpenAI, Google, Meta, any big tech company, you know how this works. The lawyers in the room, we don't have to explain the kind of systems that they do in order to be in the country. There's a pending law where, Meta said that they actually are not based in Kenya. They should not be held liable. And this case has been legislated by Masi Mutemi, and the court said no. So ideally, when you talk about extraterritorial, whatever, plus AI and big tech, it actually doesn't work. We've also seen the deepfake weapon. Politicians want to talk about misinformation. It's a great thing to talk about, but ideally, politicians want protection from themselves, So that's also a political weapon that we see. Then we go to the next slide. We think that there's an exact playbook. A few years ago, though, I got into trouble with certain people. I said that the startup bill, as it was then framed, was ideally Senator Sakaja looking for attention. So we think this is the same thing they've done. The legislative origin of the startup bill came up from a private member's bill, which was Sakaja then, now it is Karen Nyamu. Then we look at the sponsor background. Really, they are not AI technology people. No, they're just politicians who are doing whatever they want to do to gain attention. So I actually recommend when you talk about the bill, just say that girl, because we are not giving attention to people who have played with us for 5 years and then finally want to come out as saints that they have gotten an AI bill right. No. Then we see the presidential signal at that particular point. Thank you for all the hand claps. I appreciate that. We also see the delegation mechanism. These bills are not fully thought through. And so they're leaving a lot of the gaps to regulation. Bring us a full bill, let the work be done together with these particular ministries. And then they come in and say it's a Senate bill. So they come in with these county provisions, which ideally do not, AI literacy can be done by the officers. For example, the AI, the commissioner has shown us, the data protection has shown us that they actually have officers in the counties. They will still do the work. It doesn't have to come from a legislation in the Senate. Then IP protection, that actually has not been covered. Let's go to the next bill. We need more time for these discussions, but people are busy. So I want you to look at this in terms of the financials. If you're a startup, in terms of AI, IP protection, what does this mean for you? Our data has already been used by big tech to train on their AI technologies. There are over 250 people in this room. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate all the messages. Let's go to the next one. So what's Kenyan opportunity? What's the opportunity? What are the amendments that we can have? So in our view, it's 5.5. African ranking, it's a fast AI bill. In terms of global tire, it's really trying to outdo Vietnam and Brazil. But in terms of governance, complete absence, big tech deterrence, which is the problem. These people have too much money. They want to go to space. They want to hire robots. We are really tired of big tech. They want to replace labor. If you agree with me, please. And my friends work at big tech, our partners work at big tech, but they know that lawyers will say the truth anyway. In terms of civil liability, people are suing big tech companies every day. Tech companies, they do not have the means to stand. We need to protect gig workers. Uber drivers are working every day, but the pricing is dynamic. It's based on algorithms. How do we protect them? That is where we need to come from in terms of coming up with this legislation. And then in terms of deepfakes, that's great, you're trying, but this really is a political maneuver. Let's go to the next sort of recommendations on what we could do. So we've looked at what are the immediate amendments. We need to replace the flat penalty with a turnover-based fine. Let it not be 5 million. Let it be 7% for global turnover, so that ideally they pay attention to Kenya. We also need to think about, do we really need an AI commissioner with new cars, new office, new budget? Can we afford it? We also need to look at what China did. China said, if you are focusing AI on any provision, anyone in China, if they're using your legislation, then you must, if they're using your product, then you actually must be, you must comply by China's rules. So what that means is, it gives an extraterritorial reach. Kenya has not done that. Then also we need to enumerate prohibited AI categories. Next slide, please. So what can we be able to do in terms of institutions? I want you to study the UK. The UK did not appoint an AI commissioner. What they did is to look at what it's called the information regulator. They said different things will be done by different people. What is our competition authority doing in terms of monopoly and competition? We need to have them do competition authority and make sure that nobody uses these different mechanisms to win in a market. We don't have monopolies. But also you have the data protection commissioner. There are things that they can do in terms of child data, it's already there. But there are other things that have not been covered, which we don't need, in my view, an AI commissioner for. Let's look at the next kind of slide. We may need another discussion because we don't just have the time to have people, come in and talk about what this bill could look like. I don't know what number we are. We had 51 slides. So forgive us for taking time, but we have a great opportunity to shape this law and to see what ideally it could get into. I'm not following my own slide, so I don't know how far we are, but I'm going to pause on the presentation. So we have a few, comments from the room. I don't know if Ben Roberts is here and Dr. Fanny, Dr. Musumba, if they are able to speak. Once that is done, then we'll open up the floor for those that have, comments. This was supposed to end top of the hour, but clearly it's a very short time. If you could give us 15 more minutes, so we end at 1:15, that will be great. But just know there's more analysis from this. If you're joining us from the media, I would be happy to do an op-ed. Please reach out on our email, on our website, lawyershub.org, and we'll be able to further this. If you're joining us from another country and you need support in terms of looking at legislation, we invite you to also just reach out to us and we'll be able to have this discussion. So I think Ben is here. Let's get the PowerPoint down and then we proceed. Thank you. Dr. Ben Roberts, if he's here, yeah. I've worked with Ben Roberts over the years. He will introduce himself on what he's doing right now, but we've worked a lot at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance in regulation, speaking to the Senate, speaking to Parliament, also regionally within Africa on how the AU is shaping its legislations around artificial intelligence. And so Ben is very technical and will be happy to give us his views on what he thinks on this specific bill. So thanks, Ben, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Hi. I don't know if see if I turn my camera on, so I'll just talk and hope you can hear me. But so my name is Ben Roberts. I'm chair of ICT in the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and I'm also consulting in the space of ICT in Kenya. You know, I mean, it's thanks for the run through of the bill to Lawyers Tech Hub. I think you know. It's credit to you that you've given time to consider this bill, but you know, when I look at it, I'm just looking at it thinking, what is the problem it is trying to solve? And it doesn't seem to be really, apart from the one thing around deepfakes, it doesn't really seem to be trying to address a particular problem at all. In the business world, in you know, KEPSA is representing the private sector, is representing the business world of Kenya, and you know, it's clear that with the advent of AI, that AI is going to disrupt all industries, and that is going to be you know, coming in. It's going to change the way we do many things, and that is going to lead to some jobs you know, no longer being a priority to what they were. Now that's going to create its own problems, but you know, really, if you're looking at seemingly trying to you know, look at the purpose of a bill of AI to address issues of problems in public safety, start by looking at what the problems are and then work backwards from it. There's nothing that we are not having problems because of lack of a lack of an AI commissioner. That is you know, we have ministries. Things, all these things of policy making are catered for. We have a regulator in the Communications Authority. So we have already organizations and institutions that are well versed in and given mandate to develop policies and frameworks around this new area of technology. And subjects. So let's have a reset and let's make a new commissioner who's going to take over this subject. It's complete nonsense. It is actually going to set us back. It'll be years of you know, work in trying to you know, get this thing working. We don't need new institutions on this subject. We have existing institutions. Let's look at what areas they need to what risks to society those institutions might want to deal with. These issues of labour and other things. I don't think this is a place for an AI bill. If we have labour laws and the labour laws are outdated, which they seem to be, and not necessarily recognising the rights of AI workers and gig workers, then we need to address the employment laws that are in place. It just feels to me like, you know, let's say swimming in the sea. Okay, if you want to go swim in the sea, there's great benefits to be had from swimming in the sea for fun, for leisure. There's fish in the sea. We can make economic gains from fishing in the sea. But of course, there's dangers in the sea. You might drown. There are sharks. And this seems to be, you know, rather than we're at a stage we haven't yet explored the sea. We haven't really explored AI. So we're saying, it might be dangerous if we go in the sea. So let's make a sea commissioner who will assess the risks of whether it's safe to do anything in the sea. And they will tell us whether or not we can do that and fine us and put us in prison if we don't. It's nonsense. So I think to see a bill like this coming out of nowhere from somebody who's not been involved in any of the policy discussions or active discussions that we've had, it's extremely strange to me. It is not a draft we've seen coming out of any government ministries, and let the appointed ministries that are working on these things, carry on the work they're doing on strategies and policies. And if a rising regulation needs to happen, let that be the government process for bills. This is not the way to make laws. It is nonsense. Let us not give us credit. Let us kill the AI bill and reject this stupid motion and not waste any more time or breath on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ben Roberts. And I agree with you. I'm really curious on how you see this play out. We've been in the trenches with you for the past, few years. How do you see this play out first in Parliament, but also in the public?
Well, I think if we do pause and attempt to pacify the sponsors of this bill and waste our time discussing what they should be changing, that just gives quite frankly credit to a nonsense mission in the first place. We just need to be decisive. The young people of this country, the Gen Zs, this is not what they're looking for their future. Let us consult the industry, let us consult society, and let us just reject this thing and keep rejecting it. And let's, if a bill wants to keep coming back like the ICT practitioners bill, can keep on killing it again and again and again. There's no need to consider this. As I say, there's a process going on of looking at AI and policies around that. If there are minor adjustments we need to make into the Communications Act, into the labour regulations, into the mandate of the Data Protection and Commissioner, we can make these adjustments. We do not need an overarching AI bill to come in with this approach of dominating new institutions when really we have expertise and institutions in place that can deal with the potential problems that might arise from AI. So let us take that approach. And we don't have the money to be creating these more commissions and advisory bodies and everything else. Where are these going to be funded from? Not from 5 million shilling fines, that's for certain. There's already bodies in place that we can task to go and look at those risks. And the Communications Authority is a regulator. They can regulate on things if they see there's risks that need to be addressed. We have necessary organs and bodies in place. Let us task them with doing their job to protect society from the downside of AI.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ben Roberts. I really appreciate you. And I'd want to also, you run something incredible right now on digital economy. So if you're working on the digital economy, you can check out digitaleconomy.ke, I believe. It really encompasses the work that Ben Roberts is doing right now.
Thank you, Linda.
All righty. Excellent. So I would like to, one question on the chat, and then I will come to Dr. George Musumba. Somebody asked, Kenya did not ask for an AI bill, AI law. I was surprised. I didn't know this, but I saw this in the morning on X, that there are 3 Kenyans who went to court to have the government have AI legislation. And some of our our tech policy fellows, that's Ideate Policy Africa, asked to join into the suit, and they were approved this morning. So maybe some Kenyans asked for it. They went to court. If you could check out that, I don't know if the team from Ideate Policy Africa is on this call, but that will be great to hear what happened and how that is going. I want to introduce at this point Dr. George Musumba. He is the Dean, School of Computer Science and Information Technology, Dedan Kimathi University. He's also the AI Policy and Governance Lead at KicTaNet. So, George, we are curious to hear what's happening with the national policy framework and the kind of work that you're doing right now on AI policy, and how this bill actually impacts that.
Thank you so much. So let me put off my video that I'm able to have maybe effective internet. So thank you so much for this particular invitation. I'm not a lawyer, so if I don't speak nicely in the legal terms, forgive me, please. I believe I'll be very brief. So thank you for this. Beginning from what the last, I think, discussion is, yes, the Kenyans went to court demanding for the AI governance framework to be in the country, asking why it's not there. Yet we are having a lot of activities on AI deployment and usage in the country. The case actually is active. Hopefully, it will be some point dispensed of. So yeah, I think it's very interesting to just to be here. I'm the lead for the Kenya AI policy, emerging technologies policy, with the Ministry of ICT to try to work with everyone in the country to develop this AI policy. So as this work goes on, last month we had stakeholders engagement, 6 specific ones from academia all the way to government itself, including the private sector and all other players. While that was happening, the Ministry of ICT, which is the lead ministry for the AI policy, I think a member there, I think a director, mentioned that they were been instructed to, in the course of time, they're going to send us drafters. Ask them who drafters. They say drafters to do an AI bill. Okay. So we are waiting for them to come to be part of the team to do the drafting of the bill. But before that happened, we saw a bill by Senate. So we also got surprised. What's taking place? So is it the ministry? Is it the Senate? Is it who else is in the have done the bill? So the question is, why rush to the bill where the policy is yet to be like even draft zero? There's no draft zero available, which will then inform the policy itself. I think that's now water under the bridge. The bill is now there, so we need to be able to participate in the bill process development to make it a better one for the country. So the question is, how do we then ensure coherence between legislation? I think it's now coming up as the bill policy also coming up. And even implementation. How can this happen together? If you look at the bill, again, just my views. I think as said by Linda, the bill has some clear governance intent. You can see it's trying to establish a comprehensive framework for regulation and governance of AI in Kenya. I can see it has some anchors like ethics, transparency, accountability. I think that is coming out clearly in the bill, and even innovation, which I think is very critical. Also think of the risk-based approach being taken by the bill, by classifying the systems into many levels of risk: acceptable, high risk, limited. I think that's okay in my view, because it aligns with the global best practices we have seen in other sectors like the EU jurisdiction. There's also a strong position on the high risk AI, where I think that's where there's need for assessment to be done before the deployment is happening. Human rights is actually an impact to be carried out, transparency and other things to be done, which I think is very impressive or progressive and making our country to be globally competitive. Okay, that's again my view. Also, the issue of again, I think this I think is very controversial. Of the Artificial Intelligence Commissioner. I think my first instinct when I saw the bill, I just quickly thought of the Data Protection Act. It could have been a copy-paste mechanism, changing a few things here, the commissioner, and maybe some few other provisions. Of course,
how does this, Doctor? How does this affect you, especially those that you're teaching and the process that you're going through now with the policy? But also those at the Dedan Kimathi University is doing amazing in terms of developing tech talent. Those two things, yes. We'd really like to hear what's the impact for you as we are closing off of time.
I think as a teacher, I think it's very interesting in my view. We normally propose or vote for innovation, I can say innovation first, like what the US has done, that we allow systems to be developed in a very free space. Though there's that bit of sandbox, and then of course we see how things turn out, and then see what areas we can then of course regulate. Like sandbox, sandbox was actually was the key thing to be really promoted. I suggest, okay, my thing is we have both regulators and also the developers in the room, so that then they work hand in hand. Eventually, they can see where the issues are. Regulators can really learn from what's happening in the systems. Then innovators can also be guided by the regulators. They can then come to amicable agreement where they meet, so that you have a balanced innovation going forward. So I think that would be my take for now. And also,
does the process for the policy proceed in terms of you continuing to do the national policy framework? Is it going to stop because of this bill that's continuing?
That has not stopped, of course. We are going next month. We'll now be drafting stage of the policy now.
Okay.
I think yes.
When do we expect the policy?
The only issue is I think by June, basically. June should be. It is actually a government PC of the Ministry of ICT. I think the issue is aligning now the provisions between the policy and also the bill. Because there are a lot of contradictions that are happening. Actually, that are already been figured out.
Okay.
From what people want and what is already in the bill, a lot of contradictions.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. George Musumba. My apologies that we didn't have a lot of time today, but also want to give you personal advice. When you're with lawyers, don't start from saying, I'm not a lawyer, but never say that. Let them assume you're a lawyer. Lie to them by not saying the truth. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to go 1 minute each. Because there's lots of hands in the room and I'm seeing the chat. I'm sorry if I can't read everything. The suggestions from Rachel Firestone that we could have 2 tiers of penalties, one for Kenyan startups and another for foreign AI startups. John Wader said we need, Vader or Wader, I'm not sure. We need these laws, but they need to be made by the right people. Douglas Oma says the future will be heavily AI. That's a participatory approach. Process of developing policy, then law, and finally regulations. So I'm sorry I can't read everything, but I'm going to go to, if you want to speak, just lift up your hands and we are going to upgrade you to speak. I'll start from Quincy Otieno. You have a minute.
Thank you, Linda. So the bill currently is at the concurrent stage. It's being discussed by both speakers whether it should be in both houses, because you do raise a good point. There is a conflict, particularly on classification of it being a money bill. It's at that stage. Then secondly, this is a sneaky attempt at trying to get back Section 22 and 23 of the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act, which was declared unconstitutional, snuck in through a bill. So we have to fight it. Like, I agree with that hashtag, fight this oppressive bill. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We go to John Wader or Vader. It sounds German. Please have the floor. John, just unmute and speak. If not, we go to Rachel Magege. Thanks for joining us from Tanzania, from the data privacy professionals in Tanzania.
Yes, thank you so much, Linda, and to the team at Lawyers Hub. Well done, well done. Linda, my question is, what was the reason, the motivation behind creating this law? What motivated the creation of this law? And then number 2, I was reading the bill and looking at the qualifications part that talks about the qualifications of the commissioner. I am curious to know if there has been any discussion about qualifications of other staff who will be serving in the commission aside from the commissioner, him or herself. Yes, I found that to be really interesting, because they mentioned qualifications of the commissioner, but what about the rest of the staff who will be in that team? What qualifications should they have? Thank you so much and well done.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And there has been recommendations that we have the office, DERA, Digital Economy Regulation Authority, that ideally has the deputy commissioner, one deputy commissioner doing data protection, another deputy commissioner doing AI, and have it one office that speaks to each other rather than introduce, other things. So rebrand the ODPC to something that can ideally cover both aspects. I don't know what everyone thinks, but now we go to Douglas Ouma. The floor is yours. Douglas, unmute and speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes, thank you so much. I joined in a little bit late, but I just came in from the process of coming up with this, starting with the policy, which is an overarching statement where we are, appreciating where we need to go, but then going through a process that will allow us to actually be able to implement this. So when you start with the regulation, what is the foundation of that regulation? And how does it also go to the policy? Where do you start? So I'm talking from a point of developing policies at the continental level. We cascade it at the regional level, and then we take it to national level and even to subnational levels. So when you're just talking at the tail end of it, then the question is, what are you using as a basis for that? Yeah. So the rejection level is very high. So I think the issue is this something can be done very fast, but just develop a process that also appreciates that we're operating within a space where there are also the others. There are also some good practice. There are also certain challenges that we can actually pull in to ensure that this happens.
Thank you, Douglas. Our representative at the Judicial Service Commission, Jacqueline Ngutia, tells us the matter is before Kirinyaga High Court parties John Wangai, Anthony Manyara, and Peter Agoro versus Ministry of ICT and two others. They're the ones who went to court to urge government to ideally have regulation around artificial intelligence. I'll go to Michael Mutinda and then to Seamus Karani. Michael, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Linda. And mine is just a proposal as to the composition of the. I support the previous speakers that we do not need to have an office of the Artificial Intelligence Commissioner. And my proposal would be to have, representatives. For example, you find that the AI bill is missing in terms of consumer protection. So I'd envision a scenario where we have a board, for example, that runs all this, so that we have a representative from the office of the commission, for consumer protection, a representative from the data commissioner's office, a representative from Communications Authority of Kenya, a representative from the PS of the ICT, so that we avoid the scenario of having to create another office. And like you said, I feel that the AI bill is really missing on the sectoral appliances of AI, because an AI for the legal sector wouldn't be the same as that of the business sector and such like. And so that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. And Herman Tambo says our wage bill is already so bloated, we don't need to duplicate another office. And as we're speaking, please, media, if you could go to the next slide, it talks about the institutional design that has been highlighted just now. Seamus Karani, sorry if I mispronounced it.
It's okay. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me begin with a question asked in a different way. Why do we need this bill? Probably Ben asked, what problem is it trying to solve? If you look at the bill, most of the policy drafting with various government institutions, as well as bill drafting. And most of the bills are guided by the objectives of a national policy. The question is, do we have a national policy in this case? We don't have. So if you look at the face of the bill in itself, it doesn't have the objectives. That's why Ben is asking, what is the problem that this bill is trying to solve? I can assure you, if this bill was to be subjected to people who are in the AI space, it will raise a lot of issues and questions, and it can be drafted from zero, because it has not taken into consideration, first of all, some of these things that you had addressed while you are presenting. Can some of these issues be solved administratively?
Yeah, that's true.
Do we really need a bill so that we can solve these ones? We can't.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, I was in another bill and
you have to speak quickly, Simas, because I'm just about to mute you.
Okay. A few weeks ago, we were in another bill and policy drafting, and people were arguing, why do we need many offices? There are offices which have the capacity and mandate to deal and regulate if there is need to regulate. So I believe this bill, I don't.
Yeah. Thank you, Simas. We appreciate your views. And on the current slide, you're seeing what we see as the Data Protection Commissioner can handle. That's already within her mandate, but also the gaps that can be filled in. For example, if you look at employment law, we already have a body working on employment. In terms of anti-monopoly, we have a competition authority. In terms of product safety, we do have Kenya Bureau of Standards, and there's an intervention, I think, a few weeks ago on AI. We also have algorithm filing. There's been issues around the appeals process within this bill, which it's, in our view, the Chief Justice ideally should have a tribunal that handles these particular AI things. In my view, we do not need a new body. So I agree with you. Danai Kudia, and then we go to Demon Nashe. We have to stop at 15 so that we don't have this endless discussion. I know there's over 200 of you on the call and you're giving us your lunch break. We appreciate that. Danai?
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, colleagues, and everyone who has really contributed today. Linda, my own contribution is with regards to the clarity between the relationship of the commissioner and the existing sectoral regulators. I'm sure you also touched on that in your presentation to say that the bill's mandate extends to other sectors such as healthcare, education, agriculture, etc., each of which already have existing regulatory body. So yet the bill does not specify how the commissioner's authority really relates to and is coordinated with or is bound by the authority of the Communications Authority, the Data Protection Commissioner, and the Kenya Revenue Authority. Yeah. So maybe the bill should include a provision establishing a mandatory coordination protocol between the commissioner and other sectoral regulatory bodies. Maybe that is my main concern, seeing that you've also raised the issue of a new commissioner coming in when already we have these regulatory bodies. And then lastly, I would like to say that I was actually looking at the bill and I've done my own analysis, which I will share with shortly on my LinkedIn page. Thanks. Yeah. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks. We appreciate it. And I also agree with you. That's the model for the UK coordination mechanism. No new office come up with a coordination mechanism between these particular offices. Let's go to Damon Dashe, and then we'll hear from our Judicial Service Commission representative, Jacqueline. Yeah, Damon? Okay. We have no time, so we'll go to our Judicial Service Commissioner representative.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you, participants, for joining. Linda, you always do an amazing job when it comes to issues of tech, and I'm not disappointed to have sat through the hour to just listen to you. I do agree with you that this bill is premature. And in addition to what other previous speakers have mentioned, when you have a bill, if you look at clause 3, the objects of the bill speaks of establishing an office, then there's something that is not right. And to me, I foresee a situation where this bill will die a natural death, in as much as the move of the bill speaks of it not being a money bill, but there's this establishment of an office which will be expected to get its funding from the exchequer. So we should just have a situation where we go through the traditional way of lawmaking, let the industry players, the different government agencies responsible for all these things that we've spoken about, come up with a policy. Once the policy implemented once the policy is implemented after some time, then we can come up with a legislation. So that would be my feedback. And I do agree with, I can't remember his name, that this is a bill that should just die. It's premature.
Yeah.
We'll have a law that we may not have the ability to implement it. But thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ngutia. We really appreciate you. And I think we try to be very objective on this call so that we'll be able to handle these issues, speak about it, and see where it will get us to. I want to say, I read this bill and I said, where are the women? Please go to Parliament. We need the brilliant women in Parliament. If you want to vote for me, please first send me money and then I will join Parliament, because people are just introducing bills they don't understand, things they don't do. They don't have passion for building, because we run startups, we run businesses, we know how crazy it is to build. And I want to ask that as many of you get angry and get into Parliament, because you will just introduce a bill on our behalf. I tried to do to remodel this bill this weekend. I spent so much time with this bill, and I actually said, if we go fire for fire, the Gen Zs in this room, could you support us? Let us look for another member to introduce another bill, not in the Senate, but in the National Assembly, and give them an updated bill. That is what we did with Huduma number, and came up with a different copy of Huduma number. And everybody rose up and said, this is not what you do. Those who are supposed to go to court went to court. Each and everything needs to be done in the sense. So I want to urge you today, if you know somebody in the media who could, try and help us to get our op-eds out, because all the op-eds I'm seeing are people really pleased. It looks like the EU. Kenya needs to know it is one country. It is not a union. It cannot build regulation as EU. I am currently in Europe, if you know my story. And this is the problem. We are borrowing from Europe. There is no innovation that goes on in Europe. People are struggling every single day. Startups are facing bureaucracy because of GDPR, because of the regulations that we are copying. So please, I want to say again, sometimes you want Beyonce's hair, but you do not have Beyonce's budget. So Kenya needs to stop copying regulations because they want to look like the EU. We do not have that particular budget, and that needs to stop. So I am going to give CPA Umeme, Steve, the floor. You have the final authority to close this very well. If you do not close it well, CPA, please do not speak again in our midst. What does this mean for accounting and for, especially bureaucracy? So, Umeme, Steve, the floor is yours. You have to sound brilliant because we are ending.
Thank you, Linda. About sounding brilliant, I'll leave to your judgment. But okay. If I am to contribute with this, I'm thinking of Singapore, the story that we are told in very many quarters. Singapore offers a compelling alternative. However, you look at Singapore, they began their journey doing sectoral guidelines as opposed to how we are doing it in Kenya. Kenya looks like we are moving towards legislating comprehensively first, then hoping that institutions catch up. It is the wrong way to approach it. So maybe what the government should be doing is to begin comprehensive AI legislations that enhance sectoral compliances, so that things like healthcare, financial services, hiring tools, those ones are regulated first. And then about legislating AI becomes something that by default falls in line. This way we can say we are headed there. It is 6 years since we began the journey on AI in the global space. Singapore is still building sectoral guidelines, but up to now, you realize they have more sectoral balance as opposed to legislation, and they're headed in the right direction. So maybe for us, we should move these towards sectoral institutional legislation as opposed to having a comprehensive one first.
Excellent. Thank you so much, CPA Umeme Steve. You sounded brilliant. You are brilliant, not even sounded brilliant. And I like what you said. Kenya compares a lot to Singapore. There's a great article by Nicholas, I think Okumu or Opio, he wrote this in the dailies last week, that we really are legislating for a country that we are not. And he compared this to Singapore. So I think that's really great. I want to say thank you to the media team. Thank you for joining us today, guys. We really appreciate you. Every Monday, just join us at 12 o'clock. There will always be a link, and we'll be talking about the current policy issues on our Policy Mondays. We hope that you can join us. If this discussion requires a second opinion, we'll do it next week. We've been doing a discussion on Zimbabwe's AI strategy that was launched last week. And, we hope that you can always join the Lawyers Hub, check out our website and our socials, follow us, don't be jealous, just retweet our work. It's a way of showing your love. It really helps us in that particular way. We didn't charge you for this, but we know you're going to charge your clients for, the kind of information that you've gained from here. So just like our post, that's all we are asking for. We also run trainings on data privacy. So if you're not an IAPP certified professional, we offer that particular training course. Join our WhatsApp group. Louisa is going to share a link with you, and an email will come in for you to join our WhatsApp groups. Check out aipolicy.africa. Check it, use it. I know there are people here who are policymakers with government. You didn't want to say your name. We appreciate you. We see you. We know the impact that this is having on the ministries as well. So we really appreciate the goal is, we must beat poverty. This policy poverty must end because we are building policies for the West because we can't afford our own budgets. This needs to end. There are people who can do this within the country. We have professionals who can do these things. And so we hope that we'll be able to drive the country forward in everything that we do. So share our content, attend the Africa Law and Tech Festival happening on 9th and 10th of June. Bring your children because we have Tech Festival also happening. We want to teach your kids how to use AI, how to be safe online. So support our work in that sense. If you know a sponsor who can sponsor this work, introduce us to them. Our email is info@lawyershubafrica.com. Check out our website, lawyershub.org, and we'll be really happy to have you. So thanks, everyone. We love you, and see you on another post, okay? See you next Monday.